I woke up with a pounding in my head and a taste in my mouth like metal and cotton. My wrists burned, zip tie marks still fresh, and the concrete beneath me was cold, gritty. The only light came from a single bulb overhead, swaying slightly on its chain. I sat up slowly, tried to get my bearings. Cinder block walls, no windows, metal shelves stacked with paint cans and old tools. A cot in the corner, a jug of water, basement. The sound of footsteps above, heavy, deliberate. A door creaked open at the top of the wooden stairs, and there he was. My dad, Richard. He stood just inside the frame, backlit by the hallway light, face hard as stone. "You'll be safe down here," he said, voice flat. "Don't try anything stupid." I scrambled to my feet. "Dad, what the hell is this?" My voice cracked. "What are you doing?" No answer. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared like he was looking at something behind me, or maybe through me. Then he stepped back and shut the door. The lock clicked. I stood there for a while, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. It didn't. I tested the knob, but it was deadbolted from the other side. No handle, no latch. Just a thick wooden door with old hinges and a faint scratch down the middle. I sat down on the cot and stared at my hands. They were shaking. My wrists still stung from the zip ties. I didn't know how long I'd been out, or how I got here. The last thing I remembered was being in my car, driving home from work. Then, headlights too close, and nothing. Above me, muffled footsteps moved away. Then silence. I looked around again, this time slower. There was no phone, no clock, no windows, just walls and tools and old paint buckets. And the stairs. The bulb above me flickered once, then held steady. I stared at it, until the afterimage burned into my vision. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't some breakdown or moment of temporary insanity. This was something else. And I was trapped. I found the note on the second day. It was taped to the wall near the stairs, just above eye level. A sheet of white printer paper, creased at the edges. 5 words in thick black marker. "Don't speak after midnight." Beneath it, smaller writing in the same hand. "Don't look in the mirror. Don't answer the phone unless it rings 3 times. That was it. No explanation. No signature. I read the rules 3 times before pulling the tape loose and taking the paper down. The handwriting was blocky, rushed. I checked the back blank. I didn't remember a mirror in the basement, but I checked anyway. No mirror. Nothing reflective. Not even metal, polished enough to see your face in. But now that I was looking, I did notice something new. A framed object on the far wall, draped in a sheet. It hadn't been there yesterday. I didn't touch it. Instead, I focused on what I could control. There was a cot-thin mattress. Military surplus, maybe. The kind that smelled faintly of dust and rust. A water jug, half full. A stack of canned food, chili, soup, beans. A rusted manual can opener. No labels on most of them. The hanging bulb overhead flickered again but stayed on. I thought about yelling, screaming. But I hadn't heard anything from upstairs since the first night. If Richard was up there, he wasn't making it obvious. Instead, I paced. Counted the steps from one end of the room to the other. 11. Turn. 11 back. The walls felt tighter every hour. On the 3rd night, I sat on the cot and whispered out loud. Just to see. Hello? Nothing happened. At midnight, the bulb flickered, hardens. Twice, then steadied. I held my breath. Something scraped behind the far wall. I didn't speak again after that. The phone rang once the next morning. I didn't even know there was one until it rang. Old rotary model, beige plastic, bolted to the wall near the breaker box. It rang twice. Then silence. I didn't answer. Later, I tore the rules into pieces and flushed them down the basement toilet. I still remembered every word. I still followed every rule. By the 4th day, I'd stopped trying to keep track of time. The single bulb never turned off. I slept in short bursts, ate when I was hungry, drank water sparingly. The cans were almost gone. I still hadn't seen or heard from Richard. But someone was up there. It started faintly, just the soft creak of floorboards overhead. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard the unmistakable thud of a cabinet door closing. Once, maybe twice. A chair scraping. Voices. Muffled. Just enough to make out tone but not words. One of them was definitely his. My dad had a way of talking, like he was trying not to low, but sharp. The other voices were harder to place. Familiar in cadence. Not content. I banged on the ceiling once. Hard. Just to see. "Hey! I'm down here." Nothing. Not even a pause in conversation. The next morning, or what I guessed was morning, I tried again. Yelled until my throat was raw. Slammed my hands against the ceiling until my palms ached. Still nothing. They knew I was here. I knew that now. I just didn't know why. By the third night, I was lying on the cot, staring at the ceiling when I heard it. Laughter. Real, loud, unfiltered laughter. A burst of it. Then music. Something old vinyl crackle, heavy bass line, maybe jazz. A bottle clinked. Footsteps thumped above me, light and fast. People moving, talking, celebrating. A party. I sat up slowly, every muscle tight. Listened harder. The floor was alive with movement, no wheels clicking, a chair tipping, laughter rising, then dying. Someone shouted a toast. I heard my name. Not my full name, just Lucas. Said casually, like someone had asked where I was. Then more laughter. I didn't move, just sat there, frozen, listening to the sound of people drinking and celebrating directly above me. Like I didn't exist. Or worse, like I did. And that was part of the plan. The phone rang at midnight. 3 sharp bursts, one after the other. I stared at it from the cot. It was mounted next to the breaker box, yellowed plastic and cracked near the base. I hadn't touched it since the 2-ring call 2 days earlier, hadn't even gone near it. But this time, it rang 3 times. I stood slowly. My legs felt weak, like I hadn't used them in days. I crossed the room and picked up the receiver. "Hello?" Silence for a beat. Then a voiceadry, raspy, like sandpaper over gravel. "You have to get out before the offering." That was it. Just that one sentence. The call disconnected. No click. No static, just gone. I stood there with the receiver pressed to my ear, heart racing. I tried redialing, but the rotary didn't move. It was frozen in place. I replaced the handset and backed away. Who was it? How did they know I was here? And what did they mean, the offering? I stared at the phone for a long time. It didn't ring again. Back on the cot, I tried to convince myself it was a prank, or a hallucination, or maybe I was losing it after being stuck down here this long. But the voice had been real, calm, intentional, and it knew something. Upstairs, the music played on muffled, low now. Someone was humming along. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the voice, because I believed it. I couldn't stop thinking about the voice. The words, "before the offering," looped in my head, over and over, like they were waiting for me to act on them. I didn't know what the offering was, but I knew it wasn't symbolic. Not with the way Richard had locked me down here. Not with the way the rules had warned me, like a set of fail-safes. So I started searching. Not just pacing. Not just looking. Searching. Methodically. Every wall. Every seam. I ran my hands along the cinder blocks, tapped for hollow spots, moved boxes, lifted the old rug by the cot. I didn't expect to find anything. But near the back wall, behind an old metal tool rack, something shifted. A panel. About 2 feet wide. The paint was old, blistered, slightly darker than the rest of the wall. It wasn't obvious unless you were looking for it. I grabbed the rack and pulled. It groaned, but moved just enough. The panel had a tiny metal lip. I wedged my fingers underneath and pulled until it creaked open. Dust fell out in a small cloud. Inside were several boxes, shoebox-sized, unmarked, covered in grime. A dry, stale smell poured out. I opened the top one first. Photos. Old. Black and white. Curled at the edges. Families I didn't recognize, except one. A boy who looked almost exactly like me. Same jawline. Same dark eyes. But it wasn't me. The photo was dated 1973. The second box had what looked like a journal pages torn out. Sentences crossed through. At the bottom, a small stone object, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Lines. Circles. A spiral cut into the center. When I picked it up, it felt heavier than it looked. Colder, too. The last box had a mirror inside. Cracked. Wrapped in cloth. The glass was shattered in the middle. The cracks webbed outward like something had hit it from behind. I rewrapped it and put it back. Whatever this was, it had been hidden for a reason. I sat for a while on the floor. The photo of the boy still in my hand. He looked calm. Still. I wondered how long he'd lasted. I didn't hear the front door open. I felt it. The rush of cold air through the old vent above the pantry shelves. The vibration of footsteps against the floor joists. Then the unmistakable sound of a crowd laughter. Conversation. Voices layered over voices. The air shifted, like something thick had settled in the space above me. The party had started. I moved to the vent and crouched beneath it. It was rusted at the corners. Thin slats bent inward. I could only see slivers of light, but I could hear everything. Music was playing now. Not the kind of background jazz from before. Louder. Something orchestral, grand, and old. Like ballroom music from a century ago. Then I heard my father's voice. Clear. Projecting. The house is ready. Midnight. As usual. A round of laughter followed. Toasts were raised. I heard glasses clink. Someone whistled sharply, and a cheer went up. The floor trembled as people moved in rhythm dancing, maybe. Or circling. I didn't understand it, but it felt rehearsed. From where I crouched, I could see a sliver of the hallway above. Someone passed by in a red dress. Elegant. Not party store casual. This was formal. Strange for a house like this. For a night like this. I backed away from the vent and sat on the cold floor. Midnight. That's when it would happen. Whatever it was. My father hadn't just invited guests. He hadn't just locked me away to punish me or protect me. He'd done this before. I could hear it in his tone. Midnight, as usual. This was tradition. This was ceremony. I thought about the carved stone in the box, about the shattered mirror, about the boy in the photo who looked like me but wasn't, who had also probably been locked down here. How many others had there been? The music slowed. A different voice started speaking, now deeper, more deliberate. Not quite a chant. More like a recitation. The language didn't sound English. Above my head, a chandelier shook slightly. Dust rained down. Whatever this was, it wasn't a party. Not the kind anyone ever left. I waited until the music got louder, thick with drums and strings, too big for the house. It masked the sound of metal scraping against old wood. The tools from the panel weren't much. A rusted crowbar. A flathead screwdriver. A hand chisel. That looked like it hadn't been used in decades. But they were enough. I worked fast, careful not to knock anything over. The dumbwaiter was behind the cabinet where the paint cans were stored. I'd noticed the uneven wood paneling my second day in the basement, but hadn't looked closer. Now I did. The seams weren't natural. There was a gap small, almost invisible. I pried the cabinet loose. Behind it, a narrow shaft framed in rotting wood. No platform, just rails. The pulley system was rusted solid. It looked like no one had used it in years. Maybe no one was supposed to. I tied the flashlight from the panel to my wrist with a piece of frayed cloth and took one last look behind me. Then, I climbed in. It was tighter than I expected. My shoulders brushed both walls. Every movement scraped skin. The smell was like mold and copper-old, things sealed away too long. Halfway up, I almost got stuck. My chest compressed. I had to turn slightly and exhale all at once just to keep moving. I didn't think, just kept climbing. When I reached the top, I paused. There was a thin panel of wood separating the shaft from the pantry. I pressed on it gently. It swung open. The pantry was dark. Shelves lined with dusty jars and glass bottles. I slid out feet first, landing with a soft thud on old linoleum. I stayed there a moment, crouched, breathing slowly. From the other side of the wall, the music pulsed live, like the house had veins. Voices echoed through the hallway. Laughter. Footsteps. A clinking glass. I heard my father say something I couldn't make out, followed by a round of toasts. I was in. And the house was still alive. The pantry opened into the main hallway, same layout I grew up with, but everything was wrong. The wallpaper had changed. Yellow and floral, peeling in the corners. The carpet runner was olive green, thick, dated. The air smelled like mothballs and furniture polish, a scent I hadn't smelled since I was a kid visiting my grandparents. It was like stepping into a preserved version of another decade. I moved slowly, back pressed to the wall. No one was in the hallway. The voices came from the living room, now soft, chanting under the music. Not quite words. I passed the den. The door was half open. Inside, the furniture was all different. Older. A heavy floral couch. A record player spinning something low and scratchy. On the wall, a gallery of photographs. I stopped. They weren't ours. Rows of black and white portraits. Families in front of the same house. Different years. 1954. 1966. 1979. The same front steps. The same porch light. Different people. At the center of the wall was one photo in color. Dated 1997. My father stood on the left. Younger. Thinner. His arm around a boy about 12. Not me. Not anyone I recognized. The boy looked straight into the camera, unsmiling. There was something hollow in his eyes. I stepped closer. Someone had scratched the name off the frame. I looked back at the hallway. Everything around me, carpet, the furniture, the musicet, didn't belong to the house I knew. It belonged to something older. Something that had been waiting. In the reflection of the glass frame, I saw movement. I turned, heart racing, but no one was there. I backed out of the room, careful not to touch anything. The walls felt tighter now. The air, heavier. Who was the boy in the photo? And what had happened to him? I didn't know yet. But I was starting to think I wasn't the first person who'd made it out of that basement. Just maybe, I'd be the first one to come back. I moved through the house like I didn't belong there, which, I was starting to realize, might be true. The pantry opened into the hallway, but I kept low, hugging the walls, moving past rooms that looked familiar and not at the same time. The voices were louder now. Laughter had faded into murmurs, rhythmic and low. I followed the sound to the living room, stopping just short of the entryway. The wall beside the vent had a small crawlspace storage or something older. I squeezed into it, settled between wood beams and insulation, and peered out through a narrow slit where drywall had peeled back. The living room was full. At least 20 people stood in a circle, all facing the fireplace. They wore black and deep reed-robes or cloaks, hard to tell in the flickering light. Some held candles. Others held hands. My father stood at the center, a wine glass in one hand. Calm, steady, proud. He raised the glass. Tonight, we honor the pact. The others responded in unison, words I didn't understand. They were too smooth, too fluid, like a language I was never meant to hear. Then they removed their masks, and I realized they hadn't been wearing any. Faces stretched unnaturally, as if skin had softened into wax. Eyes too wide, mouths too long. One man's smile split clear to his cheekbone. Another blinked sideways. I stopped breathing. Then the fireplace groaned. Not from heat, but from pressure like. Something behind it was pushing forward. The flames went black, then flared bright red. A shadow spilled out, not walking, not crawling, just appearing. Slow and tall and impossibly thin. It didn't make a sound. Didn't seem to notice the people around it. No one ran. They just bowed their heads. The thing hovered in the air, like smoke held in shape by will alone. My father spoke again. The ward is in place. The house is ready. Another round of that smooth foreign language echoed through the room. I backed away slowly, careful not to breathe too loud. Whatever this was, I hadn't escaped it. I'd walked straight into the center of it. I made it 3 steps down the hallway before he caught me. Lucas. His voice calm, measured like always. The same tone he used when I was 7 and broke the neighbor's window. I froze. He stepped out from the dining room, closing the door quietly behind him. No panic, no rush. Just that same unshakable presence. How did you get out? I didn't answer. My heart was pounding too loud to speak. He looked me over. Not angry. Not surprised. I told them it was a mistake to use the basement again. He muttered, more to himself than to me. I took a step back. He raised a hand. Not threatening, just tired. Stop. Please. I stopped. Not because I trusted him, but because his eyes weren't lying. He looked older than he had 3 days ago. Like the weight of whatever this was had finally started pressing down on him. I didn't want this either, he said. I laughed, dry and sharp. You locked me in a basement for a week. I know. You drugged me. Left me down there like a prisoner. I know. His voice cracked. First time I'd heard that happen. I stared at him, waiting for more. He sighed. Rubbed his jaw like it hurt to explain. Our family protects this town. Has for generations. That thing in the fireplace, it doesn't leave, doesn't feed, doesn't touch anything as long as we keep our side of the agreement. I didn't move. Each year, someone stays in the house during the ritual, he said. Alone. Bound. Watched. It's called a ward. And this year it was my turn. He nodded slowly. You knew. You planned this. I didn't choose it. It has to be bloodline. And your mother, his voice faltered. She was supposed to be the last one. But she. He didn't finish. I stepped back. The light from the living room flickered across the walls like fire licking wood. He held up his hands. Please. If you run, if you interfere, it breaks containment. You don't know what you're dealing with. I looked him in the eye for a long time. I don't care, I said. And I ran. I didn't remember the run through the trees, just the feeling of branches tearing at my arms and my lungs burning with every breath. I kept running until the music was behind me. Until even the wind sounded empty. Then I saw the light. A single bulb. Swaying on a front porch. The cabin looked abandoned, weather-beaten wood, rust on the hinges, windows smeared with dirt, but the light was on. I knocked once. The door creaked open like it had been waiting. She was already there, sitting in a wooden chair by the stove. Thin, wiry, maybe in her 50s. Her hair was streaked with white. Scars ran down one side of her face like claw marks. You made it out, she said, not surprised. I didn't answer. She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat. You're Richard's boy, she said. Knew I'd see you one day. How do you know my dad? I knew your grandfather, she said, and his father before that. Same house, same pact, different name every few years, but the same blood feeding the same thing. You were part of it? No, she said. I escaped. The stove crackled softly. She stared into it like it showed something only she could see. I was the ward. 1996, she said. They picked me because I didn't have family to ask questions. I broke through a cellar wall with a pipe and ran. They said I doomed everyone. But nothing happened. She leaned forward. Because I took it with me. She reached beneath her chair and pulled out a small cloth bundle. Inside was a smooth black stone, carved with runes just like the one I'd found. But this one was cracked. I smashed it, she said. But it reformed. Over time, you have to do it right. There's a seal underneath below the house, buried in the floor. Break the conduit. The object will collapse. So will the pact. And then it stops, she said. Maybe not forever, but long enough. I stood up, took the stone from her hands. Thank you. She didn't smile. Don't thank me, she said. Just don't let it win again. I waited until the clock in the town square struck 11. The house was still alive when I got back. The windows pulsed with candlelight. Shadows danced across the glass. Voices drifted through the wall, soft now, reverent. The party had moved into something else. I slipped in through the side door. No one was guarding it. Why would they? The ward was already gone. I moved fast. Down the hall, past the pantry, into the basement stairwell. I stopped at the top, listening. Nothing. I crept down, one step at a time. The bulb was still on. The cot was undisturbed. Everything exactly how I'd left it. The panel behind the tool rack was still open. I pulled the crowbar from my bag and crawled through the maintenance space. The rune object was where I'd left it, tucked between the boxes, but now it pulsed faintly, like something inside was breathing. I took it in both hands. The basement felt tighter, heavier, like the walls had drawn closer in my absence. I found the seal beneath the floorboards, just like Marla said. I used the crowbar to pry them up. Beneath the boards was packed dirt, and in the center another rune, carved in stone. Same spiral. Same markings. Except this one was pulsing in time with the object in my hand. I didn't hesitate. I slammed the rune object into the stone as hard as I could. It cracked on the first hit, split on the second. The moment it broke, the air went still. Not quiet still. Like sound itself had stopped moving. Then the house groaned. Deep, guttural. A shudder rolled through the foundation. I stumbled back as dust fell from the ceiling. Above me, the music stopped. Then the screaming started. I grabbed the broken shards and stuffed them into my bag. The lights flickered once, twice, then burst. The basement went dark. The smell of ozone filled the air. Something had shifted. Not just broken. Unbound. And I wasn't sure if that was better or worse. I barely made it back up the stairs before the house started tearing itself apart. The first crack came from the dining room, like wood splitting under pressure. Then the chandelier above me swayed so violently I thought it might fall. I heard the screams before I saw the faces. Sharp, sudden, panic, without words. The hallway rippled. Not metaphorically. It moved. The wallpaper stretched, buckled, then tore like wet paper. Beneath it, the walls pulsated as if veins ran behind them. I ducked low and crept toward the living room. The guests were scattered, frantic. Some clawed at the walls. Others stood frozen, faces slack, eyes rolled back. One woman convulsed on the floor, limbs jerking to a rhythm that didn't match the chaos around her. In the center, Richard stood alone. He held a broken candle in one hand, the other raised toward the fireplace. Keep the circle. Do not break the... Too late. The circle was already gone. Candles snuffed out. Salt scattered. Symbols smeared with blood and boot prints. The thing in the fireplace he had started to emerge. But it was wrong now. Unstable. Not graceful like before. Its form flickered, splitting into layers, like static caught on a broken screen. It screamed. On sonata sound. But a pressure wave. It dropped two people to the ground. Another simply vanished. I saw Richard stumble. He looked at Menno, anger, No surprise. Just resignation. I told you, he said. But he never finished. The creature collapsed inward, imploding in slow motion, as if reality itself had turned inside out. The shadows retracted, folding back into the hearth. The walls stopped pulsing. The floor stopped breathing. Silence. The room smelled like ash and copper. My ears rang. The creature was gone. But the house wasn't done. It began to creak. Low at first, then louder, deeper. A groan from inside the bones of the structure. Paint peeled in long strips. Glass cracked. Floorboards splintered. I ran. The air outside was cold and thin. Like all the oxygen had been pulled out of the house and left behind a vacuum. I found Richard near the base of the stairs. Half conscious. Bleeding from his scalp. He wasn't dead. Not yet. I grabbed him by the arm and dragged him through the front door as flames started licking up the walls behind us. I didn't look back. The fire didn't behave like normal fire. It moved fast, upward and inward, consuming rooms before they could even finish collapsing. No smoke, no smell of burning wood, just heat and light and hunger. By the time I hit the street, sirens were already echoing in the distance. Someone must have seen the glow. The fire truck arrived 6 minutes later. Ambulance, 10. A deputy showed up just after sunrise. I told them I'd found my father unconscious, that we'd been home when the explosion started. They found a ruptured gas line near the basement. Called it a freak accident. No mention of the guests. No remains. No trace of candles or carvings or claw marks in the floor. Just heat damage. Scorched surfaces. Some minor structural collapse. They chalked the screams up to confusion. The music to delusion. Trauma hallucinations. Richard didn't speak. They sedated him at the hospital. Hooked him to machines. When I left his room, he was still breathing. The house was gone. Marla disappeared not long after. Her cabin was empty when I returned. The stove was cold. The floor swept clean. No note. No rune object. Just silence. I spent that night in a motel room, staring at the ceiling, waiting for something to move in the corners. It never did. I wanted to feel relief. But mostly I felt like something had paused. Like the ritual didn't end, it just lost. For now. They called the fire an isolated incident. They called my story unclear. But the thing is, I remember everything. The faces. The voices. The moment the walls pulsed like lungs. The moment the house breathed me in. I live about 30 miles from where the house used to be. Quiet town. Fewer than 5,000 people. No one knows my name unless I want them to. I work at a small mechanic shop on the edge of town, 8 bays. One office. 2 vending machines that still take quarters. It's not much, but it's enough. The nights are long here. Cold. Peaceful. I sleep better now. Or I did. Until the postcard came. No return address. No stamp. Just my name in block letters. No last name. Tucked neatly in the crack between my front door and the frame, like someone wanted to be sure I'd see it the second I got home. The front was blank matte gray. No image. Just the texture of thick cardstock. The back said only one thing. You weren't supposed to survive. M. I read it once. Then again. I didn't need to ask who M was. Marla had disappeared the week after the fire. Vanished like she'd never existed. No trace. No property records. No ID. No footprints in the snow outside the cabin. Just the black stone she gave me. The one I smashed. Or thought I did. That night, I didn't sleep. Around midnight, I walked the perimeter of the house. Checked the locks. Checked the tool shed. Nothing out of place. Still, I didn't go back to bed. Something gnawed at me. Some twitch in the back of my mind, like I'd left the door open to a place I should have bricked shut. Around 3 a.m., I finally lay down. No dreams. No nightmares. Then I rolled over and felt it. A faint warmth beneath the floorboards. I reached under the bed slowly, half hoping there'd be nothing. half hoping I was wrong. But I wasn't. Wrapped in a piece of black cloth, just like before, was a rune object. Smaller this time. But the markings were the same. So was the weight. Heavy. Cold. Except it wasn't cold. It was warm. I didn't move. Just sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it. The pact was broken. But the door? I wasn't sure it had ever fully closed. And maybe I wasn't the only one still watching it. Or being watched. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.